Hello everyone and welcome to Counselor Feature Friday. I'm your host, Brian Urban. In these features, we hope to give you some simple tips, tidbits, and tricks to make your days easier and your patients happier. In this feature, we're going to talk about counselor security settings. So these would be the settings that you would put in place for individual staff members. So to begin, we'll click on Administration in the top menu bar and then select User List. Now you would either create a new user within your account, or you of course can edit an existing staff member. Once we click the edit option, or once you've created a new profile, you will choose the security setting. Now, we do receive a lot of questions as to what these different areas mean. If there's certain things you wish to do or questions you have, my goal in this overview is we're going to give you some background, and then what I'm going to show you is we've created a document that breaks this all down as well. But let's start with just kind of starting top to bottom here. First off, there is the option to set up we call permission roles or security roles. This would be typically used in larger clinics if you have multiple locations, many providers, and you want to set up security settings for a specific provider or staff member type, I should say. That way, in one go, you could change everything at once, right? So that is done under administration and user roles. Okay. When we look at the specific settings for an individual, as we move forward, move downward the list here, we can see clinic access. This does give you the ability to say which clinics this specific staff member has access to. Now, of course, any staff member can search and find patients across the entire clinic group, but if you limit their clinic access, it means they can't perform any activities within that clinic, meaning they can't create a new invoice, they couldn't edit the patient's profile, they couldn't create a patient visit or schedule an appointment. So they can see the patient, they know they're there, so it prevents duplication of patient profiles, but they can't actually do anything in that clinic location. Okay. There also is the ability to limit the dashboard widgets. So if there's specific widgets that you do not want an individual staff member to view, you can have those removed. Now, for the most part, this is managed via the security settings. So if you have, for example, a staff member where they do not have access to business reporting, well, then they wouldn't have access to the invoicing and sales widgets, right? So you likely want to start with the security settings first, and then if you find there's a widget that they still have availability to or access to, then you could go in and remove that individually. Totally up to you. Now, as we get into the individual areas themselves, obviously this is broken down to a lot of different areas. Many of them are hopefully pretty self-evident, but just breaking down these definitions here, of course, none means there's no access whatsoever. If they try to go into the company admin area, it just says you don't have access here. Right? It doesn't show any information, no user list, everything would be blank. If they have view only, of course, in this specific case, they could see, I should say the clinic list they could see, but they couldn't do anything. Right? Same thing goes for templates. They could view the list of templates, but they couldn't make any modifications. If they have the view add update setting, that means of course they can not only see it, but they can add new ones, and they can update or edit the existing templates. Okay, moving to the right here, this last setting, of course, adds in the delete options. This means they can do all of the following, and they have the ability to remove. As you can see, you can set these settings based on each one of these categories. So depending on the specific roles of that staff member, you can grant or remove access to different areas. For example, if you have an accountant and you want to give them full access to invoicing related information, and also possibly the business report generator, but you don't want them messing with patient visits, right? So you give them full access here, and you'd probably give them view only or maybe none here, right? So you can be highly specific. A provider may be the reverse, where they have access to visits, but you don't need them looking at the financials. Okay, so you can decide that on a case-by-case basis. Now, as we look down to the right here, there is the business reporting section. This is where these tools control access to the business report generator, so largely the features available under the business tab, as well as some of the widgets I mentioned on the dashboard. So this is where someone who has access to the business report generators can see, for example, all line items all time or all devices all time, and then use that information, filter it, download it, set up scheduled reports. There's a lot that can be done in those business report generators, as well as the various summaries. Okay. So generally, this is an area that you're typically careful with as far as who has access to it. In addition, the company administration is another area you're typically very careful about who has access to it. Those are probably two of the more important areas. So probably the most important, I'd probably say overall, would be the company admin, the user admin, and the business report feature here. Now, if I do click here, what's going to show is that you can grant access to specific clinics. So you don't have to necessarily open everything up, but you could say, hey, in a specific location, I need this person to be able to access this data. So you could grant this on a very specific basis here. So for example, here I open this up so this staff member can view patient policies, which means they would be able to jump into the policy report generator. Right? Maybe there's a specific task that needs to be done routinely or a one-time job. You can access, or you can add this access and then pull it away as needed. Okay. With any of these changes, when you make them and then you click Save, obviously a very important step, the changes take effect immediately. So if you ever you realize, whoops, this isn't quite right, go ahead and make the change. It will take effect immediately. Okay. As we work downward here, you can see there's an option where the user can only view their own schedule. So if you want providers, for example, to only see what's on their schedule, you can do that. Whereas someone who is like a scheduler, for example, you'd want them to have full access, obviously. We look at business hours. This allows you to set the range of hours available for your daily schedule within CounselEAR. So just visually what you see as available in CounselEAR. Right along with this, you can set your online business hours. You want these to really jive with what you have in the business hours, but this lets you set your range of available hours for online scheduling. So typically this would be a subset of the business hours, right? So maybe you're open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, but you're only available for online scheduling from 10 to noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Right, whatever the case may be, you can set those up specifically on a clinic-by-clinic basis. Okay. As we move downward here, there's API webhooks. This isn't one you typically would need to worry about. This is something that is mainly used by developers for very, very specific purposes. So this is one you largely can ignore. Cost of goods sold, of course, this gives you the ability to dictate which staff members have the ability to see the COGS. Right, so that means within the invoice and various other areas within the system, can they modify the COGS? Okay, there's one exception to this rule when someone's adding in stock via the dashboard widget for stock, the quick add feature. They can enter COGS at that time. So let's say you ordered a 10-pack of devices. The COGS may be unique to that order because maybe there was a discount for ordering 10. They would be able to enter the COGS. But when it comes time to look at the invoice, they wouldn't be able to see it there, or they wouldn't be able to see the default COGS that you have in your line item list. Okay. This patient upload feature, also a very, very specific feature. This is for clinics that need to upload large lists of clinics in one go. Perhaps if they work off-site and they're collecting a lot of patient information off-site and then need to load it in one go. So maybe a senior facility is providing a list of patients that will be seen tomorrow, and it's 20 patients. You want to load that all at one time. So very specific use for this. Now, very common use would be access to CounselEAR No Cloud. So this is the idea that giving this user, this staff member, the ability to access CounselEAR No Cloud. This has no connection with standalone NOAA. So if you host your own version of NOAA or your own instance of NOAA, this does not apply. This only applies to CounselEAR No Cloud, where CounselEAR is hosting your NOAA database. Okay, the last option here is the multi-factor authentication. This is a security feature that you can activate once again on a staff member by staff member basis, and it would require that they use what's called Google Authenticator, so that when they want to log in, they have to use this other systems. They have to enter a code to be able to log into CounselEAR. So it adds an extra layer of security in order to be able to access CounselEAR. As I mentioned, with any changes here, you want to go ahead and click Save, and it will lock in those changes. Now, as I referenced earlier on, CounselEAR does have a document that describes this. This is included in the Feature Friday email. A link to this is included, I should say. And this is a document. You can go ahead and download this. You can save this for access when you need it. It starts out by doing just what we did today, by defining the different roles in a little more detail here. So it gives some examples about what they can do and what they can't do with specific security settings. As we go further down the document, it gets into specific areas, talking about, for example, user administration, physician administration, etc. Some of these are very simple, right? So user administration, these rules only apply, right? Very specific. Same thing for the rest of these. As you get a little further, though, there is some nuance. This is oftentimes where many of the questions come up around security settings is, well, I want to grant access to this, but maybe not this. Or I'm looking specifically at this area. How do I identify which security setting accounts I need to adjust in order to give them access to that feature? So this breaks it down. Right, and template administration, probably the most elaborate, I believe it is the most elaborate of all of them, breaks down those individual areas. Now, our intentions with how you'd use this document would largely, you would do a search, right? Because actually you can see there's a lot of different areas that are included here. Once again, these are the areas we talked about, but what you probably want to do is just do a quick search. So you would just click anywhere in the document. The way to do a quick search is click Control F at the same time. That'll bring up a search function within your browser, or if you downloaded the PDF within the Adobe system itself. And then you can search. Here I already typed in OAEs, and I can do a quick search, and that will show me OAE. So if I needed to allow a staff member to modify the OAE configuration, right, the crossover frequencies for the specific OAE equipment, I do a quick search, there it is. That tells me that function is within the template administration. Okay, so that means for that staff member, in order for them to have the ability to modify the OAE configuration, I would need to give them a minimum of view, add, update. That gives them the ability to see the OAE configuration, to possibly add if there's nothing there now, or to update those settings. Okay, and once again, that could be a limited time thing where you grant access and then you pull it back, right? Totally up to you. But once again, you can search on the topic, find the area that needs to be managed. For example, if you found something with a to-do list, you'd say, okay, great, that is the patient administration that we need to change the settings for that staff member. Go up and make the related change. Or if you find someone has too much access, right, you can find out where it is and pull that back. All right, so once again, our goal with this document and hopefully this Feature Friday is to give you a good sense of how the CounselEAR security settings function. If you have any questions, please let us know. Give us a call, email us, live chat us. We are always happy to help. So thank you very much for joining us for today's CounselEAR Feature Friday. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.